Hello and welcome to Timeless with Julie Hartman Live. It is Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024. I'm Julie Hartman, and it is great, as always, to be with you. And by the way, happy belated Labor Day. I hope that you all had a fantastic Labor Day. I know that we missed Timeless yesterday. Usually we are live Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern, but we are taking the day off, as we do here every September in the United States. So I hope all of you had a restful holiday. 844 See, I gotta look down now. Apparently I had such a great Labor Day, Sean, that I can't do it by heart so quickly. 844-861-5537 is our call-in number. 844-861-5537. And as always, you can use the live chat, which I have a direct line to right here, as long as you keep it classy. Now, what is not so classy, unfortunately, some of what we have been seeing on campus recently. I remember being in college and coming back from the semester after Labor Day and the excitement that permeated campus. Well, it seems like the more things seem to change, the more they stay the same. And we are seeing that now on Columbia's campus. Students today were welcomed back to class with a little taste of what they got at the end of last semester. Let's roll it.
Hey, boss. Yo.
Fun. You may recall that a few months ago, I was actually there on campus in April when the big protests were raging and the students had occupied Hamilton Hall. And this video that we're watching right now is, you see right there, just this morning. That's outside the main gate of Columbia. Fun. And it looks like they still have the tent. You know, again, when I was there in April and we played clips of this on Timeless, I was taking footage of students having to go and show their IDs in tents before entering the main campus of Columbia. Usually in the good old days, people, tourists, everyday civilians could walk in and out of these campuses, but sadly, it seems so much like the reality has changed as the war in Israel and Gaza rages on. Though really, I believe so much of this is sort of irrespective of the Israel-Gaza war. This is the issue that many of those individuals are seizing on right now. But really what they are doing is indicative of a deeper emotional, political, intellectual, and cultural malaise that right now is being especially channeled towards Israel-Gaza, especially in the wake of what we saw this past weekend, which we're going to be discussing this episode. But lest you think that this is only going on at Columbia, I want to show you something that a listener of Timeless and Dennis and Julie sent to me. Shout out to, let's call him Tom. We're not going to say his real name, lest he be targeted by some Hamasanites. However, he sent me this pamphlet from Princeton University. His daughter actually attends Princeton, and they gave me the inside scoop. This pamphlet is being distributed to students during orientation, freshman students, and it's called Princeton Disorientation. We're going to go through that a little later in the episode. And the point of this pamphlet is to, quote, dispel the propaganda that Princeton disseminates, to expose the university's inner colonial, white supremacist, and exploitative machinations. We want to orient you to the real power struggles at play. How does Princeton support oppression, and how do we resist? Welcome back to school, everybody. Seems like it's going to be a great year. Well, you know what is actually great? Maybe not the school year, but what is great is making prudent financial decisions. And that's why right now I want to talk to you about gold. Economists are warning us about massive tax hikes that could hit our IRAs and 401ks hard. With inflation rising and global uncertainty, it's no wonder that central banks and many Americans are turning to gold. If you haven't thought about gold yet, now is the time, and you should consider trusting Priority Gold to help you diversify your savings with gold and silver. Text GOLDEN to 1-800-405-GOLD for a free gold information guide and see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Experts agree that physical gold is one of the best ways to fortify your savings by tying your assets to something physical. Act now to get your portfolio working for you while, at least for now, the market is golden. Text GOLDEN to 1-800-405-GOLD to learn more. That's text GOLDEN to 1-800-405-GOLD. So amidst the continuation of the university rot here in the United States, we are seeing this thrown into sharper relief by what happened this past weekend in Gaza. According to Daniel Hagari, the spokesperson of the Israeli Defense Forces, on Sunday, the IDF recovered 6 bodies of Israeli hostages who were shot to death by Hamas terrorists in underground tunnels in Rafah. These 6 Israeli hostages are named Eden Yerushalmi. She's a 24-year-old. She was a 24-year-old who was kidnapped during the Nova Music Festival on October 7th. Ori Danino, a 25-year-old male who was also at the Nova Music Festival. Almog Sarusi, 27-year-old male, also at the Nova Music Festival. His girlfriend was killed there. He was kidnapped by Hamas. Alex Labanov, who's 32 years old, he was a bartender at the Nova Music Festival, and he actually has had 2 children, and one of his children was born while he was in captivity. Carmel Gott, she was a 40-year-old female yoga instructor who was kidnapped by Hamas on October 7th while she was on a kibbutz visiting her older mother. And finally, Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who was a 23-year-old American Israeli citizen. And that is a name that many will recognize because Hirsch's parents spoke at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago just a few weeks ago. They spoke about their son whose arm was blown off by a grenade on October 7th. And he was featured in Hamas propaganda videos that they took of the various hostages. And we could see in those horrible videos that his arm was missing. So as I said on Sunday, according to the IDF, these 6 Israeli hostages' bodies were recovered in Gaza. Now, according to the Times of Israel, it appears that they were shot in the back of the head, execution style, about 48 to 72 hours before the IDF recovered their bodies. And Hamas has said that the reason that they executed these 6 Israeli hostages is because they knew that the IDF was getting very close to rescuing these 6 hostages in the Philadelphia corridor in the south of Gaza. We know that in June, there was a heroic IDF rescue of 4 hostages. It did result, according to the Gazan health authorities, in the killing of about 270 Gazan civilians. But again, it appears, according to Hamas, that these 6 were executed because the IDF was encroaching on these terrorist tunnels that they have endeavored to eliminate since the October 7th massacre. Now, when we think about these 6 hostages, we need to also consider from our American perspective what a massive calamity, to put it mildly, it's very difficult to find the appropriate words for something like this. I want to put this in a bit of an American perspective. We know that on October 7th, Hamas slaughtered 1,200 Israeli civilians. That is an exorbitantly large number by any count. But given that Israel has 9 million citizens in its population, we need to consider this according to scale. That would be the equivalent of 45,000 Americans being killed in a single day. Now, also on October 7th, we know that those 6 hostages that were just executed by Hamas mercilessly this past weekend were among 250 hostages taken captive by Hamas on October 7th. Again, a huge number in any scale. But to scale that up to our American understanding, that would be the equivalent of not just 45,000 Americans being killed in a single day, but 9,500 hostages being taken in a single day. According to AP News, there are about 100 hostages that are believed to remain right now in Israel. 35 of those are believed to be dead, but that means that there are several dozens that are embedded underground in the remaining terrorist tunnels in Gaza. The head of Hamas, Sinwar, is believed, according to the Times of Israel, to be surrounding himself with many of the remaining alive hostages, which include not only Americans, but civilians from all around the world. These were not only Israeli hostages who were taken in the October 7th massacre. This is an international event. These are hostages representing dozens of countries. And again, according to the Times of Israel, Sinwar, the head of Hamas, is embedding himself around these hostages and has threatened that if Israel, the IDF, gets too close to free these hostages, that Hamas will shoot these hostages in the same way that they shot those 6 hostages this past weekend because the IDF was getting too close to where they were embedded. Now, this specifically marks a turning point in the Israel-Gaza war, because obviously the reason that Hamas took hostages was to have increased leverage over Israel. It wasn't just enough to execute, rape, maim, and slaughter 1,200 of Israel's civilians. Hamas needs more negotiating power. They are taking 250 Israeli hostages in order to further their desires to eliminate the Jewish state. And so what's really different about this situation that happened this past weekend, this tragedy, is that it is the first time in the war that, at least so publicly, that this could have happened, clandestinely or without Hamas publicizing it. This is the first time that Hamas has executed these hostages while Israel was coming in to rescue them. We have seen that hostages were traded back during the start of this war. At the end of 2023, there was a temporary and short-lived ceasefire deal that released over 100 hostages. We have a picture here, picture 4, of one of those little girls who was brought back to her family in Israel. And again, that was about a 6-day ceasefire. It was also a exchange. There was an exchange that took place with Palestinian prisoners being sent back to Gaza, Palestinian terrorists, that is, being sent back to Gaza. So we have seen that there have been trades of hostages. We also have seen that the IDF has successfully freed hostages from Gaza. We know back in June there was a really spectacularly successful operation by the IDF. That is the one that I had mentioned, which the Gazan Health Authority said killed 270 Gazan civilians. But it appears that after that, the landscape has really changed because Hamas has seen that Israel, the Israeli Defense Forces, are capable of coming in and not only neutralizing and executing Hamas terrorists and dismantling their underground tunnel terrorist system, but rescuing its own hostages. So this past weekend, the fact that Hamas executed 6 hostages, that is a very, very, very big turning point. And clearly it is done extremely tactically because part of the negotiating power that any country, or in the case of Hamas, entity that takes hostages has is if those hostages are alive. That is one of the biggest ways that you get leverage over a country, over individuals, by having them know that their citizens, their family members are alive. And it raises the stakes for negotiations. So the fact that they just killed 6 of them, was really a large statement from Hamas. And it tragically and brutally is a statement that this is something that they appear to be willing to do going forward. That this is a mechanism that they will undertake in order to get Israel to do what they want. So we really have to understand this. We have to understand how big of a turning point this was. And predictably, those in the West, and I'm specifically going to talk primarily about my own country. I am not an Israeli citizen. I am not Jewish. I am an American citizen. The response from the West has been, instead of to blame Hamas, instead of to put pressure on Hamas to, stop killing Israeli hostages, to stop its global export of terror, instead of putting the pressure on Hamas to free the remaining hostages, those in the West are funneling their primary attention on Israel and on the United States with regard to their pressuring Netanyahu's government to, quote, do more. Now, many of these individuals are not clear about what this means, do more. Do they want a total ceasefire? Do they want these hostages to just remain in Israel? Like, what is the do more that many of these individuals are wanting? Of course, there are many principled disagreements about Israel's strategy in Gaza, whether or not they should have gone into Gaza, if this really is leading to the best possible outcome. But it is just amazing that the primary attention and the primary blame from lay people, from civilians who really are not tied to this conflict or do not understand this conflict, is to focus very much on Israel instead of Hamas, who just executed 6 individuals, including an American citizen. Also, hugely important for us to understand is that over the past few months, as there have been proposals of a ceasefire, of an exchange of hostages, that there actually was one this past week. So we know, for instance, that the head of the CIA, the deputy CIA director, David Cohen, said last Wednesday that, quote, Israelis were showing seriousness in negotiations. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said in the days after that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel has, quote, accepted a ceasefire deal. Our CIA director, David Cohen, went on to say that ceasefire deal, quote, is largely a question that is going to be answered by Hamas. So in other words, last week, the American messaging to the public was that there was a ceasefire deal. Israel, again, according to the deputy CIA director of our country, was showing, quote, seriousness in the negotiations. Blinken said that Netanyahu had, quote, accepted the deal. But then going forward, it was in Hamas's hands as to whether or not that deal would go forward. That's the, quote, largely a question that is going to be answered by Hamas, quote, that we have from our CIA director. So, we in the West have had a very troubling response. We understand very little about what is actually going on. For instance, how many people, if you were to go up to American citizens and ask them, do you know about the latest status of the ceasefire negotiations? Most Americans wouldn't have any idea. And of course, you can't blame them. Keeping up with Middle East politics is about the hardest job that any person could have. But at least if Americans do not understand the latest situation, at least they should just be quiet about it. Or at the very least, not go out and yell things and protest about things that they don't have a damn clue about. And it is especially troubling that when we see 6 innocent civilians being slaughtered by one of the worst terrorist groups in the world, as happened this past weekend, it is very troubling to see that there isn't this sense of wanting to believe or protect those innocents. You know, we hear all the time, for instance, in the United States, believe victims, protect women. We have this intense, really kind of idolization of victim mentality, I believe frequently wrongfully channeled here in the United States. But then when we see that there are real victims, 6 innocent civilians, including an American citizen, who are pawns in a global war. It's so concerning that for all that our country has to say about what is going on in Israel, that there isn't any kind of sense of mourning or of loss. We have lost any kind of nuance. These individuals who we saw at the beginning of this episode on college campuses, it is difficult to have any semblance of respect for them. But I would have more respect for them if they held up posters of the 6 innocents who were slaughtered and talked about those innocents as being pawns in a global game, even if they are still channeling their outrage, towards primarily the Israeli government, or even if they are still so mad at the West or whatever they're mad at. I would have a bit more respect for them if they were, for to use a Gen Z term, giving the same energy towards Israeli innocent civilians and an Israeli American innocent civilian as they do with Gazan innocent civilians. But they're not, which tells you a lot that you need to know about these individuals. Before we continue, I want to quickly talk to you again about gold, because it's very difficult to make sense of all that's going on in our world right now. But there are some things that you can do to make sure that you are in a good financial spot no matter what happens. And one of the best ways to do that is to tie your assets to something physical, something that has value no matter the economic or global situation, and that is gold. As I had said, economists are warning us about massive tax hikes that could hit our IRAs and 401ks hard. With inflation rising and global uncertainty, it's no wonder that central banks and many Americans are turning to gold. If you haven't thought about gold yet, now is the time, and you should consider trusting Priority Gold to help you diversify your savings with gold and silver. Text GOLDEN to 1-800-405-GOLD for a free gold information guide and see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Experts agree that physical gold is one of the best ways to fortify your savings. Act now by texting GOLDEN to 1-800-405-GOLD to learn more. That's text GOLDEN to 1-800-405-GOLD. And while we are talking about things which would benefit us, another thing I want to tell you about is pillows and sheets and slippers and kitchen towels and bath towels and all these other great products from MyPillow that you can get right now at a massive discount if you use the promo code Hartman. Right now, you can get the queen size premium MyPillow for only $19.98. That's made with a patented adjustable fill that adjusts to your exact individual needs regardless of your sleep position. It helps keep your neck aligned. It holds its shape all night long so that you can get the sleep that you need and deserve. But that's not all. You can get their 6-piece kitchen or bath towel sets for only $25. The brand new mattress topper for as low as $69.98, and their famous MyPillow bed sheets for as low as $25, and so much more. Go to mypillow.com or call 1-800-566-6745 and use the promo code Hartman to get big discounts on all MyPillow products, including the premium queen size MyPillow for only $19.98. That is the lowest price ever. Don't delay. Order today. Use the promo code Hartman at checkout. Okay, so we have this situation this past weekend where the bodies of 6 Israelis and 1 Israeli American are recovered by the IDF after Hamas executed them because the IDF was getting too close, according to Hamas. We also know that last week there was a deal that the United States government said that the Israeli government had agreed to, and that at that moment was in the hands of Hamas to agree to. Today, during the start of classes at Columbia University, we are already seeing dozens, if not hundreds, of students gathering to protest the genocide or the apartheid that they are alleging is occurring in Israel. And in the midst of all of this, the president of the United States, who, by the way, still is the president. We've kind of forgotten about him because now Kamala Harris is the nominee, but President Joe Biden still is the president. He was spending some time on the beach this past weekend. He came back to the White House yesterday, and he was asked by reporters what he thought about Netanyahu's response or Netanyahu's culpability in the wake of this execution. Let's watch this quick video.
Do you think it's time for Prime Minister Netanyahu to do more on this issue? Do you think he's doing enough?
No.
No. So President Biden is just saying no, that Netanyahu is not doing enough. Now, you can love Benjamin Netanyahu, you can hate Benjamin Netanyahu, you can agree or disagree with the action that the Israelis are taking in Gaza, but it is just such a simple response that the president is giving. And it also goes against what his Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, and the Deputy CIA Director of the United States, David Cohen, were saying as recently as last week. That again, quote, Israelis were showing seriousness in their negotiations, that Netanyahu had accepted the most recent deal. So it is so unpresidential in so many ways to just go, no. Okay, can you elaborate? What more do you think he could be doing? Seriously, and that's not a sarcastic question. What should Benjamin Netanyahu be doing? You are the American president. The Americans, the Qataris, the Egyptians, alongside the Israelis, are facilitating these deals, which many Americans on Columbia's campus, everyday Americans, all of us, we want an end to this conflict. You are representing the United States. Can you elaborate at all? And you know, one of the reasons that it seems that the president stays away from really elaborating, and we even saw that in this CNN Dana Bash interview between the vice president Kamala Harris and her running partner Tim Walz, we saw that, you know, they put out these platitudes or these kind of very neutral statements about Israel, that we need a ceasefire, you know, we need to end the conflict. Well, no, blank Sherlock, we need these things. Can you please provide specifics of what needs to be done and how the United States is going to accomplish that? The reason, in my judgment, that these individuals stay away from that is because the Biden-Harris administration contributed to the October 7th massacre hugely by their policies with Iran. This is the big thing that people all around the world, and especially people in the West, seem to have no understanding nor any deep concern for. And that is that the Islamic Republic of Iran, under the Biden-Harris administration, has gotten billions of dollars in unfrozen, previously sanctioned assets, which allows them to have more spending money to export their terror around the world. And that is the fundamental vocation of the Islamic Republic of Iran. They do not hide this. It is to establish a global Islamic caliphate and to eradicate the state of Israel. On September 11th, 2023, we have to remember this. This is less than a month before October 7th. The Biden administration unfroze $6 billion in assets to go to the Iranian regime. This was oil money that South Korea had purchased oil from Iran. And what happened was that the United States had frozen those $6 billion in order to use it as leverage. And the Biden-Harris administration, in order to free 5 prisoners that were being held by Iran, American prisoners, unfroze $6 billion of those assets to go to Iran. So this is important. This is not a direct money transfer. People go, oh my gosh, those conservatives lie. The Biden-Harris administration didn't give a direct money transfer. That's not what it is. When you unfreeze assets, it kind of is a direct money transfer, but it allows the Islamic Republic to have more money to do what it is that they desire to do. That happened in September of 2023. And then again, this is what Americans and people in the West do not know and do not care about. After October 7th, after the largest terrorist attack in Israel's history, that would have been equivalent to 45,000 Americans being killed in a single day if this were scaled up to American numbers. After October 7th, after they had taken all of the hostages, the Biden administration thought that it was an excellent idea to further unfreeze assets to give to the Islamic Republic of Iran. This is in November of 2023. What happened was that Iraq buys a lot of Iranian natural gas. We don't like to, under the Biden-Harris administration, be great exporters of oil, but other countries know that it is a great strength of theirs. And so what happened was that Iraq buys a lot of Iran's natural gas, and the United States sanctioned those payments for that Iraq owed to Iran. They restricted Iraq from paying Iran. And then in November of 2023, the Biden administration lifted those sanctions or those restrictions so that Iraq could pay Iran back for the natural gas. Again, that's not a direct money transfer. That's not, the United States handing Iran $10 billion. But that is allowing Iran to get $10 billion by unfreezing that money. So within a scope of 2 months, right before October 7th and then right after October 7th, the Biden-Harris administration gave the Islamic Republic of Iran $16 billion in unfrozen assets. Do you think that matters at all? Do you think that matters, especially given that we know that just a few weeks before the October 7th massacre in Israel in September of 2023, Iran gave the go-ahead to Hamas at a meeting in Beirut that they funded, and they've been funding for a long time, Hamas. Doesn't matter that Hamas is Sunni and the Islamic Republic of Iran is Shia. They have huge sectarian differences, but they are united in their disdain for Israel and the West. Iran is the sugar daddy of Hamas and Hezbollah and all of the other terrorist organizations around the Middle East. And then the American government gives $16 billion to the orchestrators of one of the biggest geopolitical calamities of the 21st century. But when President Biden is asked, or when CNN's Dana Bash gives a softball to Vice President Harris about the Israel-Gaza war, they shoot out their platitudes. They say, no, Benjamin Netanyahu is not doing enough. We have to free the hostages. We have to get a ceasefire deal. And nobody wants to bring up how much America has, under this administration, has contributed to this by fomenting and giving money to the forces of evil. And by the way, nobody asks why. We know that the September unfreezing of $6 billion was to release 5 American prisoners. Many people disagreed with that. I said on a Julie Noted at the time that this was going to go towards terror in the Middle East, but at least we know the reason. Why the unfreezing of $10 billion in November? What in the world is that all about? And why do people in the West not care? Not only do pro-Israel, many pro-Israel Americans not seem to give any mind to this, and many of them are continuing to vote Democrat and will vote for the Harris-Walz administration will vote for their campaign in November. Not only do pro-Israel Americans seem to not care about this whole Iran piece, but anti-Israel Americans do not seem to care. They love it, probably. They're weird because they chant Genocide Joe, but then they're waving, Iran banners or Hezbollah banners or Hamas banners. But if they are really the liberators who they claim to be, if they really care about global oppression and about freeing those people under occupation, they would hate the Islamic Republic of Iran. They would hate Hamas. They would hate Hezbollah. They would especially hate what those regimes do to women. These are the most evil regimes on the face of planet Earth. And on both sides of the political spectrum, you get a big so what. In response to President Biden's no in that clip that we saw, no, Netanyahu isn't doing enough, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded to President Biden and addressed what many are saying is his fault for what happened this past weekend with the 6 hostages being executed by Hamas. Let's listen to Benjamin Netanyahu.
I was asked whether I'm not doing enough to the release of hostages. Well, I want to set the record straight. On April 27th, Secretary of State Blinken said that Israel made an extraordinarily generous offer for a hostage deal. On May 31st, Israel agreed to a US-backed proposal. Hamas refused. On August 16th, Israel agreed to what the United States defined as a final bridging proposal. Hamas refused again. On August 19th, Secretary Blinken said, Israel accepted the US proposal. Now Hamas must do the same. On August 28th, that's 5 days ago, Deputy CIA Director said that Israel shows seriousness in the negotiations. Now Hamas must show the same seriousness. I want to ask you something. What has changed in the last 5 days? What has changed? One thing. These murderers executed 6 of our hostages. They shot them in the back of the head. That's what's changed. And now after this, we're asked to show seriousness? We're asked to make concessions? What message does this send Hamas? It says, kill more hostages, murder more hostages, you'll get more concessions. The pressure internationally must be directed at these killers, at Hamas, not at Israel. We say yes, they say no all the time, but they also murdered these people. And now we need maximum pressure on Hamas. I don't believe that either President Biden or anyone serious about achieving peace and achieving the release would seriously ask Israel to make these concessions. We've already made them. Hamas has to make the concessions. Thank you very much. Toda rabba lachem.
You know, another really stark answer there where Benjamin Netanyahu said President Biden or anyone serious about a negotiation plan. That's a pretty strong rebuke of President Biden. Now, we know that those two didn't exactly like each other, but essentially, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is coming out and saying that President Biden is unserious. Now, what's really happening here, the really central question right now of the Israel-Gaza war is concerning the Philadelphia corridor. Now, of course, there's a much larger concern, which is that Israel has a perpetual existential threat to its existence, not only by Hamas in Gaza, but by Hezbollah up north, by the Islamic Republic of Iran and its proxy state Iraq, by the Taliban in Afghanistan, by many groups in Turkey, which has become extremely anti-Israel, and about 50% of the Western population. So that's really the big problem that as it stands in the Israel-Gaza war. But right now, the concern is concerning the Philadelphia corridor, okay? So in the Gaza Strip, essentially what has happened is that the IDF has taken control of the Netzarim corridor, that's the east-west corridor. These are underground tunnels that allow terrorists to keep weapons, to go into Israel or go into Egypt. And Israel has taken control of the east-west corridor in the Gaza Strip. And then down south, right at the border of Egypt, is the Philadelphia corridor. And so Israel, in its campaign over the past 2 months, has gone down south, 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 south. And now it has control of this Philadelphia corridor. This is where those 6 hostages were executed, in Rafah, which is the border city on this corridor. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government's argument, and by the way, he has opposition within his own government about this policy, is that Israel must secure and control the Philadelphia corridor because, he says, there are about 150 tunnels between the Philadelphia corridor in Gaza and bordering Egypt that allow terrorists to come in and out, weapons to come in and out, etc. However, many Israelis are saying that they need to give up that Philadelphia corridor. There needs to be a ceasefire, and essentially, Israel needs to get the heck out of Gaza. You can agree or disagree. There are large protests going on right now in Israel. We have a video of it, but I think we'll skip on that. Huge protests in Israel. Israelis are in a different situation. They know their situation better than anyone. They elected Benjamin Netanyahu's government. We're going to put that aside. As an American, the American response to this is outlandish. Because again, there are the many, many pro-Israel Americans who, I hate to speak in generalizations, many of whom vote Democrat, and they are not understanding the Biden-Harris incompetence and the Biden-Harris fueling of the Islamic Republic of Iran that is continuing this conflict. So there's a large sect of the American population who just, even though they're pro-Israel, just don't get it. And then, of course, we have this growing number of crazies who are just whining and screaming and yelling about something that they have absolutely no clue about. And they claim to be the bearers of, morality. And they claim to be championing the underdog. But then here we had one American Israeli hostage who was executed in the head the other day. This is an American. And he had his arm blown off by a grenade. He was executed. And these people don't give a bleep. Let's look at what happened in New York yesterday. So we saw this Columbia stuff, nothing about the 6 executed innocents, including one American. Let's look at picture 8. This is New York City yesterday. 7,000 people gathered in Manhattan and were screaming very varied things: ceasefire, apartheid, genocide, etc. They're blowing tear gas. They are holding Hamas terrorist flags alongside Syrian, Iranian, Hezbollah, and Palestinian banners. And it's just chaos. It's literally just chaos. And most of them haven't a clue of what is actually going on. If you ask them basic questions about the conflict, they wouldn't know. And this is the situation that we have found ourselves in. The deadening of the American mind. It is reminiscent of what we have profiled many times on this show, of what Yuri Bezmenov, the KGB defector, who exposed the 4 steps of ideological subversion that the Soviet Union had established to destroy the West. It is totally reminiscent of what was outlined in that plan. There is an ignorance, an uninformed myopia, a deadening of the American population where people are just going out into the streets yelling about things, wanting to feel a part of something. And many of them are going to vote for this ticket come November, which has appeared to not do anything really meaningful or consequential to help the alleged outcomes that these individuals claim to want, which is stopping of the war. I want to turn in our final few moments to something that I showed at the beginning of the show, and I think is very much tied into the New York City protests and the general malaise that we have here in the United States. And that is the pamphlet that we saw at Princeton. And so what we, again, have to understand about this is that we have people who are not only turning against the West and America and our allies through their total ignorance and lack of understanding of this Israel situation, but we have so many people who are being inculcated to protest and who are being literally spoon-fed to just have a Pavlovian resistance to whatever their higher-ups in this, anti-colonial white supremacist movement are telling them. At Princeton, we are going to be seeing so many protests this year. This is another really big point of this episode. We just saw a huge uptick in the stakes of this war. We just see that campuses are coming back. You think that people are just going to chill out? You think that we're not going to see more of what we saw this past spring? We were all very grateful for the summer. But this war continues to rage. People continue to yell and shriek and destroy property and take to the streets about something they haven't a damn clue about. And then we see on campuses, people are doubling down in order to make this a primary cause of the year. So here's Princeton. Again, this is a disorientation pamphlet that was handed out to freshman students during orientation week. Let's show, if we could, a picture. I believe it's picture 2 again. It's called Disorientation. It's the main pamphlet there. Okay, Princeton Disorientation Guide. That's the one that said that we want to actually show people what the real power struggle is at Princeton and show how the school is steeped in white supremacy and colonization, okay? This is a huge pamphlet that we could dedicate a whole episode to, but it is quite literally a roadmap of how students can dedicate their entire year towards this Israel-Gaza conflict. And other things too, climate, abortion stuff, but really the front and center thing is the Israel-Gaza conflict. Let's look at picture 10. Let's see if that's the same picture. Yeah. So let's look at that. Again, these are also all over Columbia's campus. I have a friend there who is sending me pictures from the inside because only students with their IDs are allowed to enter the main area because otherwise it would get out of control. It says, shut it down. That was today that we saw, September 3rd, 9:30 a.m. Join the picket line. Don't cross the pick out line. Call out sick. Do not enter campus. Do not go to class. Do not hold class. So we'll see how long this continues. I mean, these students occupied Hamilton Hall in April. That's when I was there. They were arrested. Remember, they were calling for humanitarian aid. I think the university just wanted to go, oh, that was the really bad end to a semester. Thank God for summer. It's coming back with a vengeance. Here's picture 11. They have campus groups that they are encouraging students to join. And as a recent graduate, let me tell you, of a Ivy League university, notice what I did there. By the way, hi, Sean. I realized I didn't introduce you in the episode. I just started going on. Hi.
Hi.
I'm not trying to obscure the name of my school, but as a recent graduate of an Ivy League university, I can tell you that they accost you. They put these banners up everywhere. They have their representatives. They are highly organized. They're trying to get you. They're trying to bully you into joining their causes. And they make it very organized. Look at these campus groups that they're having students join. And they break it down from topic area, tactics, and recent events. So you see up on the bottom left, there's the Alliance of Jewish Progressives. And it says topic area, Palestinian human rights and anti-colonial struggles. Got it. How many of them you think know about the most recent ceasefire negotiation deal that Israel, according to our government, claimed to have accepted last week? How many of them know about that? Tactics, open letters, Shabbat dinners, and educational events. Let's keep that poster up so people can see, even though I wouldn't blame you if you didn't want to look at it. Recent events, Not Our Shabbat. It's a recent event at Princeton called Not Our Shabbat. And there's another one, an alternative to Israel Shabbat. This is how students are spending their Friday night. Let me tell you something. As someone who attends Shabbat dinner as a Gentile every Friday, I want these students to avoid this and go drinking and partying on Friday nights. They shouldn't be going to anything but parties. And look at this. It's just so political. This is, you wonder how, Harris and Waltz are becoming so popular in polling numbers. These students, it's not normal. We do not have normal lives anymore. These college campuses are not normal. You guys may have gone to parties when you were in college. These students are going to Not Our Shabbat. Let's look up picture 12. This is another thing. Again, they're really encouraging students to just blindly protest, call for ceasefire, put all of the pressure on Israel and America. Don't put the blame on Hamas for executing 6 people. Let's look at what they're encouraging students to do here. Protest theory, okay? Up there it says, when should we tell the uni? So this is, a roadmap for when you want to protest. Notice the bottom left, the middle left. If you're doing something that doesn't break the rules, you can tell them. Thanks for that. If you are breaking a rule, probably don't tell them. So like, if you go and steal property, or if you go and occupy a class, or if you go and harass a student on campus, or, bludgeon them into going to your not our Shabbat, probably don't tell the university. These are Princeton students. Look at the third bullet point. If it's novel, if it's a new protest strategy, like taking Sabra hummus, as they did it when I was at Harvard, and putting Israel's an apartheid state stickers on your hummus so you can't open your hummus. That did happen. If it's novel, then you may not know that you're breaking a rule. The uni might try to talk you out of action, so we recommend against disclosing. Gonna be a great semester, everybody. Let's look at two other pictures just to show you the inculcation of protest. Blind outrage, blame America, blame Israel. Just be angry. Picture 13. These are the Princeton climate criminals. There's not a picture here, but we'll show you in another episode. They have a picture of these students protesting, and they're glorified as these great flag bearers of civilization, and they embrace the name of climate criminals. Because when you're a protester and you're doing something novel and you're truly resisting, of course you're going to be a criminal, and you should embrace that title. Because the colonial white supremacist administrators who are against you are going to label you as that when you're really just trying to help the global cause that you know nothing about. We also have Princeton for reproductive justice. Because again, all of these issues are intersected. It's their whole argument. They're connected. And these forms of oppression all compound on one another and lead to terrible, terrible global oppression of all kinds of people. Context forgotten. And then let's look at picture 15, which is really the bulk of it. Princeton, Palestine. Last picture here. They have all these pages on, look, untold stories in Gaza, apartheid week. They have pictures glorifying the students from last semester. So to close, what I really want to do on this show going forward is make you aware, to the best of our knowledge, about what is really going on right now in Israel and Gaza. A lot of commentators stay away from it, and it's extremely tricky because you have to balance a lot of different sources. And some people will totally write you off if you quote the Times of Israel, and other people will, totally write you off if you quote another source. To the best of our ability, we have to kind of figure out what is actually going on. Because trust me, I am no Nostradamus, but trust me, this is going to be a really, really bad semester. This is being inculcated, it is being fomented, it is being encouraged. And there was not a response that was adequate enough to teach these students that they better sit down and actually learn something before protesting. So as we're heading into election season, as there is this turning point in the Israel-Gaza war, which is a big part of these various campaigns and a big voting measure for most Americans, going to do the best that I can to give you a really accurate representation of what is going on in this war. Because these people have to be combated. Thank you for that on that happy note. Sean, do you have anything to say, or you're staying away from this one? Just zipping your lips.
I just imagine what's going to happen if Trump wins.
Oh my God, I know. Well, you know what? Imagine if I'm sorry to sound bleak, but if Harris and Walz win, we're screwed. And if Trump wins, you think that, this is the first day of class. And this is, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to be gnarly. On that happy note, I'll see you next time. No, seriously, thank you for being here. I hope you had a happy Labor Day. We have to remain optimistic, as Dennis and I talk about on Dennis and Julie. It is a sin to despair, but we have to stay abreast of what is really going on in the world, because these things just compound and compound and compound. More outrage, more misinformation, and we have got to stay on it. So please do join me here tomorrow. live at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern. And please do also check out Dennis and Julie, which is at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern every Sunday. Take care, everyone, and stay away from campuses. I'll see you soon.